March 1st marked the opening of a new chapter for POLIN Museum of the History of Polish Jews in Warsaw. And that new chapter is defined by the reappointment of Dariusz Stola as our director. This is an opportunity to reintroduce Dariusz to our North American Jewish friends, and American Friends of POLIN Museum is very eager to also introduce him to those who have not met him before. My name is Barbara Kirshenblatt-Gimblett, and I am the Ronald S. Lauder Chief Curator of the core exhibition and Senior Advisor to the Director, my favorite role. And so with that, I'd like to begin by asking Dariusz about his personal intellectual journey. And specifically, you are a distinguished historian of the 20th century in Poland, especially the period of communist Poland and the post-war years. You've dealt with March 68 anti-Zionist campaign. You've dealt with migration as a broader topic, but also much more specific to Poland. And my question to you is, what drew you to these topics, both intellectually and personally?
I've been asked this question many times, as if being a non-Jewish historian of Jewish history would be something strange. It's not. It started almost 40 years ago in the 1980s when I was a student at the Warsaw University back in communist Poland at that time, when by a coincidence of several factors, the Jewish past of Poland became more interesting to young people than it had been before. And I saw it in my generation. A few of the leading Holocaust scholars, for example, Polish Holocaust scholars, are of the same generation. Actually, they were my friends at the university, like Barbara Engelking. So we know each other from non-research context. Actually, we were involved in an underground solidarity bulletin publishing in the 1980s at that time. But the key moment was in 1988, when I graduated Warsaw University. I joined the doctoral school at the Polish Academy of Sciences, and I was thinking about the topic for the dissertation research. And Professor Marcin Kula, my supervisor, told me to go to the archives and see the microfilms, which recently arrived from Israel on a basis of exchange of copies and documents between the Polish and Israeli archives. And that was the beginning of a renewal of the relations between the two states, the relations that were broken in 1967 following the Six-Day War. Poland, like other communist countries, severed the diplomatic relations with Israel. Practically all kind of cooperation with Israel was non-existent in the 70s and 80s. So I went to the archive and I saw something, and I knew it's a treasure, because that was a personal archive of Ignacy Itzhok Schwarzbart, a Zionist from Krakow, who during the war was a Jewish representative to the Polish government in exile. So during the Holocaust, he represented Polish Jews to the Polish government in exile. He was the first person to read the reports coming from the Polish underground about the fate of Jews in German-occupied Poland. And he left a diary. Almost every day he was writing notes. So, immediately I saw it's a fantastic material. And I decided to write a book about Ignacy Schwarzbart and his reactions to the Holocaust, how he learned, what he did about it, and eventually his defeat. Because he lost his people, he lost the Polish Jews, the people he represented. He lost as a politician who remained loyal to the Polish government in exile, while many other people were reorienting to the new communist government in Poland. And in fact, he also lost as a Zionist because he never moved to Israel. Mm-hmm. He died in New York. So he was a Zionist who never moved to Israel. And that was the beginning. And then Professor Gutman once said that he got to a topic and then a topic got to him. And that was my case too. I realized how important, how fascinating a history it is. So I have researched on various topics related to the history of Polish Jews during the war. And then came democratic Poland soon afterwards. Situation changed. And in 1998, the government announced it was ready to give access to some files that were non-accessible under the communist regime. And as it was a few decades after the 1968 anti-Zionist campaign in Poland, I decided to, and I was the first person to see the communist secret police files on the topic. So, in effect, it was the sources leading me into topics. I saw them as important. I saw the questions, like the question of why the Communist Party turned against the Jews, against a tiny group of Jews that remained in Poland before 1968. And sometime later, I was invited to consult on the scenario for the POLIN Museum core exhibition in the making at that time. So that was the beginning of my contacts with this project.
But that led into a much deeper involvement. And I wondered if you want to say something about that transition and what convinced you that a museum of the history of Polish Jews was important and was something you would like to lead.
Well, first I must confess, I was skeptical. After several years of, the Museum of the History of Polish Jews in the making, because it started in 1993, the idea popped up in 1993. So in the early 2000s, I became skeptical, saying, okay, to my friends, well, you will keep making this museum for the next 50 years and you will never see it ready. So when I saw the building growing, only then I changed my mind. I realized that, yes, it will happen. It's possible. In the meantime, I had some managerial positions. I was a vice president of a School of Social Sciences, which was important in my decision of going to the museum because I understood how much important are Excel spreadsheets. Very, I would say, not sublime aspects of representing the past, the managerial administrative aspects. So when this opportunity arises to join the team and in this key position of being the leader of it and the leader at the key moment right before the opening of the core exhibition, I didn't have any doubts. It was obvious for me that this is something that I probably had waited for.
So in many ways, it found you.
So,
Not
I got
unlike
to a
your
topic
other
and then the topic
projects.
got to me. And in the same way, I was invited to the museum, and then I realized how much I am committed to this institution.